she's now on a campaign with a lot of support behind her, including the ladies at The View, to say, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. In fact, we're giving out tons of money. It's not true. Listen to her. And then we're going to play the Mayorkas sound because he said we're out of money. And we're going to play some sound from David Axelrod, which is really disturbing. He's one of her advisors. He's the former campaign advisor for Barack Obama, where he basically reduces all these victims to red and blue dots. I kid you not. Anyway, let's start with Kamala back on The View for the marketing.
Kamala, and I'm calling you Kamala because for all of those who are mispronouncing it, I want you all to know how to say it. There you go. But let's talk about something you would do different from Donald Trump. Right now, there is a monster storm barreling towards my state of Florida, a place that's still reeling from Hurricane Helene. Trump is lying, claiming that the Biden administration is intentionally withholding aid from the areas where Republicans live and that FEMA funds are being redirected to migrants. Ironically, that is something he did in 2019. What do you think the effect of these lies are, and why is he doing this?
Well, it's profound, and it is the height of irresponsibility and, frankly, callousness.
The drama. I told you, marketing, right? She had to get out there and sell her story. Oh, she's been practicing those lines all week.
Yeah. So lives are literally at stake right now. I traveled to Georgia and to North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. In Georgia.
Okay, here we go. So she meets with the families. And listen, I don't want to discredit any of that. That's obviously horrific what's going on. But she's saying that Donald Trump is lying. Okay, that's her viewpoint. And by the way, the viewpoint of all the ladies on The View, right? Donald Trump is lying. There's plenty of money to go to all these hurricane victims. And yet, Mayorkas, who runs Homeland Security, just said this just last week. I'll play a sound for you.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
I do believe I heard him correctly, right? He doesn't have the funds to make it through the season. I keep saying you're a business, FEMA, you're the government. Hurricane season happens every year. You ought to maybe squirrel a little bit away just in case. I mean, it's actually kind of a really big disaster. This is her Katrina, effectively. And we know how people responded to Katrina. I spent months on the ground in New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina. I covered that hurricane day in and day out for months. I remember being in New Orleans and they had no traffic signs. They barely had any power. Nothing was open. Gradually, the city started to reopen, and that was encouraging. You think about some parts of the city that just were never revived, and they never will be because they were on such low ground. But that was obviously a really horrific situation. Bush was in charge at the time. FEMA just didn't have it going on. And he wasn't organized enough, and FEMA wasn't organized enough. And so, yes, it's one of the reasons people were so enormously frustrated with him. I would suspect the same thing is going to happen here, because I don't think $750 per family is going to cut it, Kamala.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met.
$750. Okay, and they're out of money. And they're telling you that it's somehow false information, that it's a lie, that they're getting all the help they need to all these people. That's not what I'm hearing. Meanwhile, think about the horrific sort of political aspect to this. So you heard on The View, they're like, these are lies. Trump is trying to say that she's not bringing the aid to the people that really need it because they are Trump voters. Okay? That's what we just heard. That's what we heard. And yet, David Axelrod, who's her advisor and former campaign manager for Barack Obama, just went on this little podcast and maybe spoke a little bit out of turn, but Here's what he said. His words. I'm not making this up. This is David Axelrod. Watch him.
State in the
All right, we are having a little bit of the gremlins at work here. Let's see if we can try that again with David Axelrod saying rather infamously now that, you know, maybe those red people, they're not going to go out and vote.
state in the country. Here's my question about North Carolina. You had these killer storms, which, by the way, was a third big story this week.
Yes,
these
another
storms. And there's a lot of displacement in western North Carolina. Now, Asheville is a blue dot in that area.
I was going to say, Asheville's
Republican voters there.
Yeah.
But those voters in Asheville are, they're you know, the kind of voters who will figure out a way to vote. You know, they're upscale, kind of liberal voters, and they're probably going to figure out a way to vote. I'm not sure a bunch of these folks who've had their homes and lives destroyed elsewhere in western North Carolina in the mountains there are going to be as easy to wrangle for the Trump campaign. So that's I don't know how that's all going to play out, but it's an unpredictable element in North Carolina that has made it maybe a little more interesting. But just in this.
Pardon me? So now it's more interesting to you? North Carolina becomes more interesting because the Trump voters can't actually get out to vote because they're literally underwater. And somehow you can't talk about the connection between these two things and ask the question, gee, is there some reason that all the money went to a specific group and there's none left over? Again, there's none left over. That is what Mayorkas told us. Look at the headlines. New York City to get $104.6 million from FEMA for asylum seekers. Department of Homeland Security announces $300 million in direct funding in communities receiving migrants. $340 million for a new competitive awards process. $77 million in congressional funding for communities receiving migrants. This is what they're doing over and over and over again. And they want us to pretend like that's not happening? Americans aren't stupid. They clearly think so.